Hey everyone, it's LPS Peach here. Wait a minute. I don't really know how to start this video, so I guess I'm going to start with a story. A few of you have probably heard me say the reason I stopped LPS 2 while I was 12 in my last year of middle school was because I was busy, or that juggling school and YouTube became too much. This is still true, but I also stopped because of a bigger reason. For as long as I can remember, I've been super uncomfortable with myself, but I could never pinpoint why. I assumed it was a normal teenage thing as I got older, because as teenagers we have to deal with a lot of awkward things like puberty, switching schools, attempting to fit in, make friends. I figured the feeling would go away eventually as I got older and gained more knowledge and confidence in myself, but it didn't, and near the end of middle school I found out why. I know in 2018 it sounds crazy, but until the end of middle school I knew nothing about the LGBT community other than the fact that sometimes men married men. I live in a super religious town where no one speaks about that stuff, and in fact many people here are against people in the LGBT community. I've learned everything I know through the internet because I had no other way to get educated on important things like that where I live. So anyway, in grade 8 I made a couple of close online friends through Instagram and we talked every day. One day I saw that one of my friends had liked a photo of a girl and her makeup was really good, so I clicked on her account and looked at a few more of her pictures. I noticed in her Instagram bio she had the words trans, MTF written down. I had no idea what either of those words meant, so I decided to Google it since I had nothing better to do. The moment I read the definition for transgender, my stomach dropped. The dictionary definition is relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex. But in case it doesn't make sense to anyone watching, it means when someone is born, they are told whether they are a girl or a boy by a doctor. For some people as they grow up, they realize that in their brain they aren't what the doctor said they were, and they can feel like their brain is in the wrong body, or like they're trapped in someone else's body. For example, someone can be born and raised a boy, but feel like a girl inside, and being called a boy and having a boy's body makes them really uncomfortable. That person is transgender. These are probably really bad examples, I'm sorry. If you're still confused or if I haven't explained it well, I encourage you to do your own research because I'm sure lots of people have explained it a lot better than me. Anyway, when I read that definition, it felt like someone had literally smacked me in the face. It was almost like every thought of discomfort I'd ever had came rushing back at once as I realized how much what I was reading made sense to me. I spent hours at night researching everything I could whilst panicking the whole time. I can't describe how fast my heart was beating or how afraid I was, but I was also in a way feeling understood. Up until that day, I had no idea there were transgender people, or what that word even meant, but the moment I did, it felt like I had made the biggest self-discovery of my life, and I felt 10 times better while also feeling 10 times more confused. I also want to say that the internet in no way influenced me. I would have found all this out eventually. I'm just glad I discovered it sooner rather than later thanks to the internet. Ironically, even though I was excited about this information I found out about myself, I pushed the feelings down until around grade 9. Sometime in grade 9, I had come out to my mom as not straight. I've now graduated high school and still don't know what the heck to call my sexuality, honestly. The road to self-discovery is a long one, but there's no rush. I just knew back then that I liked girls and didn't care much for boys. No offense. Nowadays I'm all over the place, but it's still rare for me to feel anything for boys, so for now I just call myself queer, since that word can be used as an umbrella term to describe anyone who isn't straight. Shortly before I had come out to my mom, I met my first girlfriend who gave me the courage to come out as not straight, and also helped me explore my gender identity more. A few months after we broke up, I ended up having to drop out of high school and do online school for a little bit due to some not nice people at school. That's a long, not very fun story that I'll maybe share one day. After starting online school, I felt much more free to start expressing how I felt on the inside through clothing choices. Not much changed from my usual style, as I've dressed boyish all my life, but I stopped feeling like I had to wear makeup, and it felt great to look in the mirror and not see a makeup-covered face staring back at me. Of course, boys can wear makeup all they want, and I still do mine for fun every few months as a hobby, but at that age it always felt like a requirement. In April of 2015, I prepared to come out to my mom. I wasn't afraid to come out to her as queer because I already knew at that point that she was accepting of gay people, but we didn't discuss transgender issues much in my family, so I had no idea how she would react. I was 100% sure she would not be transphobic, thank goodness, but I wasn't sure how accepting she'd be of me specifically being transgender. I literally wrote 2 double-sided pages of what I wanted to say to her, but ended up being so shaky and terrified in the moment that I'm not sure how much of it I actually managed to say. I basically told her how I first figured out I was trans, and even though no one should have to justify themselves when it comes to coming out, I supplied proof as to why I felt this way. Looking back, it's ridiculous that I felt the need to do that, but I had no idea what her reaction would be, so I wanted to be prepared as possible. I wish I could say my coming out experience was perfect and wonderful and without conflict, but sadly, it wasn't. We talked for about an hour, maybe more, and it felt like we got nowhere. A lot of personal things happened surrounding me coming out that I'd rather not share on the internet, but I eventually convinced her to let me cut my hair short and begged her to call me anything but my birth name. For those of you who don't know, birth name is the name that you were assigned when you were born. Some trans people choose to keep their birth name and others choose to change it. I chose to change mine because it is super feminine. Unfortunately, rather than calling me by the new name I had chosen for myself, my family came up with a neutral nickname, and to this day, years later, that's what they call me. I hate it a lot. Sure, it's better than being called my extremely feminine birth name, but it's like they swapped one name that made me uncomfortable for another that made me uncomfortable. I'm also still referred to as a girl by them 3 years after coming out. I understand that having your child come out to you is probably really difficult to deal with, and I've tried many ways to get them to understand how important it is to me to be called by my correct pronouns, but there's been very little change. I try to stay positive in hopes that someday I'll wake up and magically hear my correct name and pronouns being used, but I'm not sure how realistic that hope is. I'm very lucky that my parents allow me to go to therapy because I would lose my mind without it, honestly. There's a lot of stigma surrounding therapy, but I don't let it bother me because without it I wouldn't be able to get the help I need. As of now, I'm on a waiting list to be assessed by a gender psychologist who can put me on a waiting list for testosterone and top surgery. It feels like everything is a waiting list at the moment, but there's nothing to be done but wait, really. I don't want to bore anyone and go into too much detail explaining, but in case you're curious and don't know what testosterone or top surgery are, I'll explain as quickly as possible. Testosterone is a hormone that cisgender males produce naturally. To be cisgender is the opposite of transgender, so when you don't feel like the opposite gender of what you were born as. Testosterone is what gives males deep voices, masculine bone structure, and different body parts. Since I was born in a female's body, I don't produce enough testosterone to naturally lower my voice and give me more masculine features, so I have to get testosterone into my body artificially. This can be done with needles, lotions, or patches that you stick onto your skin. There are a lot of steps you have to take before you can be put on the waiting list to get testosterone, including having a doctor assess you and diagnose you with gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is what makes a transgender person transgender. It's the condition of one's emotional and psychological identity as a male or female being the opposite of their biological sex. Again, I don't want to go too in detail, so you can look it up if you're curious. Once the doctor has diagnosed you with gender dysphoria, you can be put on the waiting list. I know people who have got testosterone within a few months of being placed on the waiting list, and others who have had to wait years. It depends on where you live, but the waiting times suck. There's even a waiting list to be assessed by a doctor, which I have been on for months. Surprise! Top surgery is a surgery many female to male transgender people decide to get. It's a surgery to get rid of your breasts and to make your chest look more like a normal male chest, and I haven't wanted anything as badly in my life as I want this surgery. It would make me 100 times more comfortable with my body, and both testosterone and this surgery would help me look more masculine so I can avoid being seen as a female in public. Unfortunately, you have to be assessed by a doctor for this too, and you guessed it, I've been on that waiting list for months as well. When I first restarted LPS tube, I told myself I was not going to come out. I decided I could handle everyone assuming I was a girl because, let's be honest, most people just assume everyone in the LPS community is a girl. I was incredibly wrong, as every time someone has called me a girl or referred to me as she in the LPS community, I felt like crying, and sometimes I did cry. I am not ashamed of my identity. I'm just a pretty private person and didn't know how to go about coming out to the people who follow me. I also told myself that if it felt like I absolutely needed to come out due to the miserable feeling I got from being seen as a girl, I would wait till June 2019, the next year's Pride Month, because this June felt so soon and I wasn't sure I'd gather the courage to come out that soon. I guess somehow I have, so happy Pride Month! My name is Hayden and I am a boy. Even though I don't sound like one, and I have to try super hard to look like one, that's what I am, and I would be extremely happy to be respected and accepted by you guys. If you have any questions and they aren't super personal, I'd be happy to answer them, as long as they aren't rude or disrespectful. You may have noticed I changed all my social media usernames as well. I would have gone with the username LPSHayden from the start if I hadn't wanted to remain anonymous, and it's kind of a hassle to change everything on all of my accounts, but LPS Peaches always felt like it didn't fit, and it was kind of a random idea I had instead of using my name. I don't really know how to end a more serious video like this, so I guess thank you for watching until the end of it if you did. I really appreciate those of you who I know will be understanding and respectful towards me, but to any of you who are not going to be respectful, I would rather you not hang around on my account. I have to deal with a lot of negativity in my day-to-day life because of how I identify and where I live, and it would be great if that didn't follow me to my social medias. If you are out of the closet and feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear your coming out stories in the comments. It's always nice to know other people have gone through the same awkward time of discovery that I have, and I'm sure others would feel the same way. Sorry for rambling so much in this video. I hope it was at least educational or interesting or anything of that sort despite me being all over the place. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. Hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye!